Africa. You know what? We are with the guru. We can't take too much time playing music. We want to learn. We're here for learning. We can always get music somewhere else, but you can't always get Mr. Henry, my mentor. And now Brendan is your mentor too, isn't it, my friend?
Yes, of course. Even if it's that's for what? Where are we? 20 minutes in the show?
Yes,
consider me having been mentored.
Beautiful.
Yes.
By the way, you didn't know this. I spoke to him yesterday. I told him that 1 day is not enough. So another 3 days.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Lucky
3
me.
shows. And remember, he's also bringing his mentor as well.
Excellent. I feel like it's time for me to start breaking out the contracts and the paperwork. Eh?
That's so good.
I'm going to honor my word, Brendan. I'll bring Professor Francois Veroli to the show.
We appreciate that. That's excellent.
Good. Brendan, I think our mentor was talking about when he was in
Sanlam and Old Mutual.
Yes.
Because what we're actually doing here is somewhat of a CV, a bit of a bigger painted picture on Henry's CV.
Yes.
But I am very keen just to get back. So you're property managing. You were busy with your commercial projects that you were obviously going ahead with. And this was, where are we now in the timeline? We are late 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Late 90s.
So Henry, from there, how did your career as mentor and coach and lecturer develop?
Actually, Brendan, so from Old Mutual, I went to Sanlam.
Yes, sir.
Spent some time in Sanlam, and then
how much time, more or less?
I spent 3 years with Sanlam.
Doing the very same thing as well?
Property management.
Okay.
At Old Mutual, I was involved on the investment side. I was buying buildings.
Okay.
Now, it was interesting. You know, if you don't spend your budget, you haven't performed. So we were buying buildings in the CBD.
Wow, that sounds like a good job. Great.
So you won't get a good bonus if you ever spend the money.
Mm.
So is this something that is happening in the government? Because it's like, we have to finish whatever that has been budgeted. If not, then it's like we didn't work.
No, you see.
Is this where this is coming from?
No, you were given a budget, and the budget was for you to go and buy properties.
Yes.
But remember that the properties had to perform.
Yeah.
So this was your expectation.
Yes, sir.
So that was your key performance area, that you need to go and buy a building or buildings, right? So we ended up having a relationship with developers.
Okay.
And basically we would have an undertaking. So you get an Upland, a Animal Man, or one of these developers.
Yes, sir.
They develop, and they were assured that there is a taker in either Old Mutual or Sanlam.
Any development that you remember around those times that you started from scratch and, you saw the finish of it, the end product from the time of the architect, during those times, obviously, when you were still employed?
Look, maybe let me just go a step further.
Okay.
From Old Mutual,
yes, sir.
I then joined SCMB that time, or SMB, okay. Standard Merchant Bank.
Okay.
And Standard Merchant Bank was basically a funder. They were financing property developers.
Okay.
So they were involved with what they call tier 1 clients. Your top clients.
Your big boys.
Group 5.
Yeah.
Yes. But they also had, your middle tier. But it was mainly the developers.
Yes.
So
will this be like people like Group 5 back in the days?
Yes.
Who were the developers back in those days?
Back in those days, you had, there used to be a company here in Randburg called Titan.
Titan, okay.
Chris Parker.
Yes.
Titan, they did a lot of these motor city developments. Upland, they're still around. They were involved at that time also with motor city developments. And more recently, they've been involved with a lot of your Centon office developments.
Interesting.
And then, you had people like Yanni Molman. You also had, your Group 5s.
Yes,
remember, Group 5, they used to have a development company.
Okay.
They did a lot of residential developments.
Yes.
And we were involved with them when they did the new JSC development. But what happened was the bank was not only a lender.
Yes, sir.
Right? They then moved to a point where they were taking equity stake or an equity position. So what they would do, they would then have a shareholding into a company, and they become a JV into the company.
And obviously, if it's like that, it's good for the developer, isn't it?
No, very much so. You know, the interesting project, right, Gavin, is the Glen Shopping Centre.
The Glen Shopping Centre, that is in the south.
In the south, yes.
Sir. Yes.
Just off Komaro Road.
Yes, just off Komaro Road. I still remember that development.
Yes, sir. Tell us about it. Yes. Let's learn.
The Glen was basically a joint venture, right? It was between Standard Bank, Jonic that time, you know. Jonic, yes. Jonic, Conco, which is the construction company, and a gentleman by the name S.P. Pereira. He's well known in the South.
Yes, sir.
He has done a number of projects there. So there was a joint venture company. 4 companies, Standard Bank, S.P. Pereira, Conco, and Jonic, 25% each.
Interesting.
So Jonic, Conco, and S.P. Pereira, they were basically the drivers.
Yes, sir.
Identified the Glen Shopping Centre. S.P. Pereira, who knew the area very well, came to the bank to say, I've got a very good opportunity. And then we then developed 45,000 square meter of regional shopping centre.
Sure. 45,000 square meters.
And look, I mean, the Glen is still very big and very busy today.
And it's still growing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Brendan, remember, it was at that time, it was 45,000. And I think now it should be about 65 to 70,000 square meters. Because it has gone through a number of redevelopment.
Yes.
But what then happened is that the bank sold their position. So in other words, they sold their stake.
But after the development has been
finished. The development, when it was up and running. And also the key, Gavin, is that, with leases, there are escalations.
Yes.
So you wait for your escalations to kick in. And the value starts what?
It goes up.
It starts to go up.
Yes.
Then
because that's what you're going to use the cash flow to
very much
to value your property.
Then you sell. So what then happened was that Hyprop, one of the big listed property companies.
Yes, sir.
Now they bought the Glen Shopping Centre, and they own the Glen Shopping Centre.
You know what? I'm trying to wait for off air, but I can't really wait for off air. Johnny, can you tell me a little bit about Johnny? Who were the owners?
No, Johnny was into media.
Yes.
Right, into media and a number of investments.
Yes, sir.
Johnny actually also owned Gallagher Estates at that time.
Interesting.
But what happened was they identified. It was interesting because I remember when we did the soul turning for the Glen.
Yes, sir.
The chairman of Johnny at that time was Cyril Ramaphosa.
In fact, that's what I wanted to say. Yes. That Johnny was mainly constituted of black people, isn't it?
Yes, but remember they went to media.
Or rather, let's say it had a number, a stakeholder of like BEA.
Yes, but I remember Cyril was their chairman because he did to do this soul turning.
Beautiful, yes. In fact, that's what I wanted to sort of explain so that the listeners also understand that some of our high-profile black people have been around and they obviously enjoyed profits because of the education and the knowledge or the contacts. I don't know how to put it, but basically they've been around.
Most of Gavin, they've been involved in real estate.
Yes.
They've been involved in real estate. Why real estate?
You tell me. Yesterday you gave me a beautiful quote. Do you have it? Do you remember it?
No, I was Brendan. I always use this quote. This was a quote from Franklin Roosevelt. the 32nd USA president.
Yes, sir.
He said something very interesting. He said real estate, right, cannot be lost or stolen,
yes, sir,
or taken away.
Yes, sir.
Right. However, if it is purchased
Yes.
with common sense,
Yes, sir.
right, managed
Yes.
with care,
Yes, sir.
and paid for in full, is the best investment that you can ever have.
Do you hear that, Africa? Now, Africa, let's be honest. The common sense, I even said this to my mentor yesterday, the common sense is not common if we only started knowing the language 24 years ago. So the only time we can know common sense is when you're listening to Brendan educating us as an attorney, listening to Mr. Henry, listening to all the guests that we bring here on Africa Business Radio. Only then you'll be able to get common sense. Otherwise, common sense is not as common as you think.
Tend to agree with you on that one, Kevin.
Yeah, but, it's very interesting. We have always looked or dissected, right, what Franklin Roosevelt meant.
Yes, sir.
When he was talking about being prudent in purchasing, or purchasing with common sense.
Yes.
And a lot of us get excited when we go and buy the property, especially developers.
Yeah.
Now, after the end of the day, the property has got to make sense.
Yeah.
There has to be the yields. The yields need to make sense. It has got to be viable.
Yeah.
But we get so excited, Gavin, because we have signed an offer to purchase.
Yes.
Right. And what is said is that a number of us, we are in a hurry to go and sign the offer to purchase.
Yes.
And we sometimes forget that there are conditions.
Yes, sir.
Right, subject to XYZ. Right? And we forget that. And we end up getting involved in all this. Brendan is an attorney.
In this show, we call it drama. We
Exactly.
get involved in drama.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And Henry, we've spoken about subject to, and we've spoken about suspensive conditions, what goes in an offer to purchase. What we're trying to do is increase the common sense with which our listeners look at property and transact with property.
Yes, sir.
So I feel like we're doing FD Roosevelt's, we're doing his words proud, at least to the extent that we can at the moment.
I agree.
Thank you. If you've already touched on that, because it's an area that a lot of people tend to ignore.
Yes. And please, for our listeners, especially the young listeners, because, our listeners ranges from the ages of 16 all the way to 90 odd. And I've got, obviously, 3 little ones who's 7 years at home listening. But let's talk about someone who's 16 years of age. When you say a developer, please qualify a developer in your own words, because they might be thinking, I don't know, the developer in Protea Clan. Qualify. Who is a developer? Because that is also a developer, but who is the developer that you're talking about? Especially when, a person like you dealing with commercial properties. Please explain to us, who is a developer?
A developer is the person that identifies the opportunity,
okay,
or the dream.
Yes, sir.
It could be a 20-year-old. He has always been walking past this piece of land, and he says in his mind, you know what? Something can be done with this land.
Yes, sir.
And what does he do? He sits down, he looks at this land, and he finds the owner of the land, and he checks, more importantly, he checks what is the property zoned for, because that is very important.
Yes, sir.
Especially if you are going to be doing either office development or any commercial development. So what you do is you identify, and then you realize that the property is zoned, let's say, agriculture.
Yes.
Right. So the first thing that you need to do is to engage your town planner.
Yes, sir.
And say, this is what I want to do. Maybe I want to develop 60 affordable rental units.
Yes, sir.
In this area. So you get your town planner. Your town planner looks at the site, and then he said, this is what you can do. But what you need to do, remember that the land is still not yours.
Yes, sir.
So in the process, you start negotiating with the buyer.
You're doing your research and development.
Yes, you are basically doing your research.
Your research, yes.
And then let's say you then agree, or you are given an option.
Yes, sir.
Right. To say you can do your homework or your feasibility or your due diligence. So you start engaging your town plan.
Town planner,
right.
yes.
Start engaging your town plan. Right.
To find out what can you build.
What can you do?
Yes,
and
sir.
then the town planner will say to you, you know what? Because this is a hectare, this is an acre, which is 4,000 square meters. We can go 3 stories. There's a precedent in the area. Roughly, we can develop 60 to 80 units.
Okay.
So he comes up with what is called an FD. So he'll say about 80 units. Now, you then bring in an architect.
Yes.
Right. So the architect...
Who brings in the architect, Henry?
The developer.
There we go.
Right. So this is the developer. He is the one that is that has identified the opportunity.
He's a dreamer, basically.
Yes, he is a dreamer. So he wants to realize his dream.
Yes.
But remember, for him to realize his dream, he needs other people.
Who we call professional team.
Who we call professional team.
Okay.
He can't do it alone.
All right. Because now we're going for that break again. So it means we have 2 people. So when we come back, you're going to tell us about the 3rd person, isn't it? You said the town planner.
Yes.
The architect.
The architect.
Then you're going to tell about the 3rd, the 4th.
The 4th, and
so forth.
how the rest of the people fit in.
No problem. Africa, hold tight. Don't go anywhere. We are back.